So let's take a look at HTML form. What is a form? A form is a group of input elements for collecting data. An example of HTML form. So this is HTML form. This is W3 School. This is a form asking for our first name and last name. Then we submit. So it's asking for our information, our names. Then we submit. This is another example of HTML form. It's asking for our email address and password. Then we log in. So it's trying to collect our information. Then we verify on the server that we a valid user. Then we can log in. So when we click on, let's click on this create new account, we see another type of form or another variation of HTML form. We see that this one now has first name, surname, mobile, email, new password, date of birth. We have select, input text here or select element here. We have the radio here that we can use to select our gender. Then we can then sign up. So we see that we've seen different type of input element inside HTML form. So how do we build an HTML form? So HTML form, the first thing we need to know here is the form tag itself. HTML form has an opening and a closing form tag. So whatever we put inside this form opening and closing form tag will be the one that will appear in our HTML form. So then another thing we need to know is the input element. The input element are the elements inside our form tag. So we have different type of input elements. We have the text, we have the radio, we have the checkbox, we have the submit, we have the button, we have a lot. We have password, date, time, different ones. So we can use this type of input element or different type of input element to build our form, HTML form that we want to use. So we can see here now, this is an example. So if we take this example now, this is the result right here. So if we take this example now, let's copy it, go to our website and paste. When we save and reload on our website, we see that we have this input element. So let me clear it up and build it from scratch so we can know how to build it or understand it better. So the first thing we need to know is, like I said, is the form tag. So write the form tag, opening and closing form tag. Then inside we put in our form element. So our input element. So let's put an input element for text. So that will request the first name from the user. So let's say input. So this input element does not have a closing tag. So because whatever we are putting inside, we are putting it through an attribute. So we are putting it, we are filling the information for this input element through attributes. So let's take a look. So now that we have our input tag, we have to specify the type of input tag. So we say this type is a text. Then we say the value that we want inside is first name. We are actually specifying the value anyway, so we can leave the value empty. I will tell you what the value does in a moment. So let's say placeholder. So this placeholder now is, so when we reload on our web page, you see what they are doing. Enter your first name. So when I save and reload, we see that we have an input element here that is asking us to enter our first name. So when we click on it and we type, we see that we can no longer see that enter our first name again, except until we clear everything we've typed. So that is what we call a placeholder. A placeholder is something that, like, is not the actual value, but it is there for us to know what to do. So now immediately we see this impute element. Now we immediately know that we are to enter our first name. So when a user sees this, they say, okay, oh, they're asking me to enter my first name. My first name is Toluwap. So that is the function of the placeholder. So this value right here, the function of the value is actually the value that we've typed inside. So the value Toluwap that I type inside is also the same thing as the value right here. So if I reload and we have a cleared or empty input element, and I come to this value and type, let me type Toluwap and save and reload, you see that we have Toluwap already typed inside our input element without even typing it ourselves. Then we can override it. So we see here that the placeholder is no longer appearing because we already have a value. But if our value is empty, the placeholder will show. So they're not doing the same thing, but so this one is a placeholder telling you what to do. This one is the actual value. So if I clear this value now and we have empty value and I reload, we see that we see our placeholder. So this is the impute element for text. Let's do, so this one is saying enter your first name. Let's do another impute text and say enter your last name. We can just copy and paste this one. So it's still the same thing, input text for input text for type text. So this one is saying enter your last name. So let's reload. We see that we have enter your last name. So we can see here that this guy, this input text is on the same line as this input text. What does that mean? Input texts are inline tag, meaning they can be on the same row at the same time. They are not block tag, they just contain their space. They don't take more space, they only contain their space. So how do we make this input tag, this input element, go to another line? This enter your last name, go to another line. We can do a different way. We can put a break tag here, a break tag, and put it here and say, when we save and reload, we see that this break tag is breaking this line, is sending this other guy to a new line. So for now we'll be using the break tag. Then we have our input for last name. Let's do input for password. So the input for password is the same thing, but is having another type. So the type, instead of using text, we say password. So let's add a placeholder and say enter your password. So when we save and reload, we see that we have this input text. The first one is enter your first name, the second one enter your last name, the last one enter your password. So now what's the difference between this input element? So we see here that when we type here, it's showing us the actual value. But when we type here, we cannot see the value because it's a password. We are not meant to see a password. So you can, well, let's go back to this Facebook. We see that this password too, if we type, we can't see the password. But there's an icon here that says when you click on it, it toggles open, like it turns it into an actual text that you can see. We'll look at how to implement this in the future video. But for now, this is a work of an input element for password. It's one that hides whatever you type inside. That's the function of a password. So we have a lot of input text, impute element that we can use to build our form. So let's add the final one to submit the form. So it's the impute element for submitting the form. So what do we call it? We call it button, or we can call it submit. Then we say submit. Then we put the value here and say the value is submit. So when we save and reload, we see that we have, let's add our break tag here. So when we add it here, we see that we have our first name, Toluap, last name, Toluap, then our password, 1234, then we submit. So we see that when we click on submit, the page just reloads. So we see how to properly implement form in the future video. So but for now, this is the basics of HTML form. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any question, just drop it in the comments. I'll try to reply. And if you enjoyed this video, drop a like and share. Thank you. See you in another video.